Trailer loading issues are one of the more common issues horse people struggle with, and this doesn't come as a surprise because as flight animals, asking horses to load in a small, dark space is quite the task. Unfortunately, a lot of the common tactics for loading horses involve coercion and force, which isn't the best way to manage a horse's anxiety and fear towards the trailer, and it doesn't generally provide longevity for good loading for a lot of horses because their anxiety is still there. They are just being forced into the trailer. So this is why I teach horses how to load differently, because the goal is to reduce or completely remove the anxiety associated with going into the trailer. In this video, I'm working with Tiki. She is an 8-year-old quarter horse mare who had some loading anxiety and difficulty trailering. This is my third session with her, the second session that I've done at Liberty, because the first I did have her on a rope. But even when I do have a halter and lead on them, the important thing is to not pull on them. First thing I do is remove her halter, and since I have already taught her to target the trailer and follow me in previous sessions, she approaches the trailer right away. I reward her approach, and then I walk in, and this is how I start out with her because she's more comfortable following me in rather than loading completely on her own. So I walk into the trailer and I encourage her to come forward. Any forward step is rewarded even if she doesn't go all of the way in initially, and then once she's all the way in, I reward her more heavily. And we've been working on building the duration that she spends standing calmly in the trailer. So this is an important factor because you don't want them spinning around and freaking out right away. I sped up some of these clips and also cropped them, so she actually does spend a fair amount of time in the trailer. Another thing we were working on with her is teaching her how to trailer backwards because horses apparently balance better when they're facing the end of the trailer. So I'm teaching her how to back into the spot so that she could be loaded into the divider backwards as well, which is why I have her turn around and then take a few steps back. This also isn't a bad thing to teach horses if you have a trailer they're able to turn around in, because it means that they won't come flying out as soon as they're turned around if they are nervous, and it teaches them to pause. So I'm teaching her how to pause on the way out too, because horses who are nervous of the trailer typically want to unload quickly. Some horses also freeze and are nervous unloading, and in these cases you would want to just quietly teach them how to come out slowly without panicking or freezing or coming leaping out. And you can see here she gets halfway out and kind of stands there. I reward this because she's coming out slowly and she's listening, because I've backed her up and made her stand in previous occasions working on here if she tries to come out, because she was so nervous before that she'd want to come out quickly or she'd turn quickly, and in doing so she would accidentally bump into people. Also, between loading attempts, I just take her for a walk, and she's motivated to follow me because being around me is reinforcing. I've taught her not to be pushy around food because she knows she only gets fed when she's facing forward and away from me, and after she does something that she's been asked to do. So she's very polite when it comes to food, and this is obviously something you'd want to work on if you're just starting out using food for your horses. And I can make a video on that at another time, but this is just solely about the trailering. You'll notice that as she repeats the behavior of loading into the trailer, she gains confidence and starts going in quicker, and this is really great. She's built upon our other sessions by loading quicker. The very first session, it took me a lot longer to get her in the first time, and then the second attempt after that, she had to pause before going in, and she did not want to spend as much time in the trailer. Now she's comfortable standing in there for quite a while, and she'll even stay in there when I get out, which is huge because initially she'd just completely want to leave if I even turned away from her. So building the duration for that was important. And then we're also working on the dividers because the dividers are loud and make a lot of noise, and it rattles the trailer a bit, especially when you're locking them. So a lot of horses don't like this, on top of the fact that the divider confines them and makes them feel trapped. So if they're not comfortable in the trailer, obviously as a flight animal, trapping them is panic inducing. So this is why I'm just holding the divider without latching it and practicing closing it and opening it, and then rewarding her when she stands there calmly. And since we're teaching her how to trailer backwards, I have her facing the correct way for that, and I've backed her up to the position she needs to be in for me to safely be able to close the divider. But with that said, we've also worked on loading forward so that she will be able to do both of them, and opening and closing the divider like this will also help her for her forward loading attempts as well, by getting her used to the noise and used to standing in a confined space quietly. In previous attempts before her new owner got her, she had allegedly mostly trailered in a stock trailer, so it makes sense that she's nervous about feeling confined by the dividers since she's used to trailering loose or tied but without dividers. So I practiced quite a bit with opening and closing the dividers and just having her stand calmly. One thing I will say is that if you're just starting out with trailer training, you don't want to start closing the dividers even within their first few sessions if they're very, very nervous, because the feeling of being trapped will escalate that panic and you don't want to have a big panic reaction. So definitely make sure you've worked on calm in the trailer without the dividers being touched at all before you move to opening and closing the dividers. Since I had 2 sessions with her before this, I am asking more of her than I would within the first couple of sessions with other horses, and it also ultimately depends on the horse's nerves and how quickly they are adapting. Every horse is different and some will take more time, and that's totally okay. You are better off going too slow than too fast, because with anxiety, if you rush to go too fast, you can create a panic response that will actually set you back for a lot longer than taking your time and going slow would. But I reward any investigative behavior for the horse towards the trailer. So any approach towards the trailer, sniffing the dividers, putting a foot in, sticking their head in more, and all of those basic steps that just show an interest in approaching the trailer or investigating what's going on with the trailer. All of those things are things that you would want to reward in a horse for their first few sessions. It can be something really small. It doesn't have to be a huge attempt. Even taking a step towards the trailer is a big win for a nervous horse. The other thing to note is that these walk breaks that I do are actually pretty important, because if the horse is experiencing any anxiety being around the trailer, taking them for a walk and removing them from the location of the trailer gives them a break and a chance to reset and relax before they go and attempt to load again. And this is really important because you don't want to trigger stack. Trigger stacking is when a bunch of anxiety-inducing events kind of stack on top of one another to increase anxiety to the point where the horse can no longer calmly handle it, and then that's when you get a big panic response. So to avoid this, breaks are important, and for horses who are highly anxious, your session might just end after they take a step towards the trailer and just put their head inside to investigate it. You might not get them in the first few sessions, and that's totally fine. Remember, you're working on reducing anxiety, and you can't do this by flooding them with too much in the way of anxious stimuli. This attempt here was actually a pretty big deal because she stayed forward facing in her spot even once I left. I left the bucket in there for her to eat, but with that said, a lot of highly anxious horses will not stay in there even if there is food in there. I take the bucket out after she's had a few minutes to snack on the grain in it and then wait for her to let herself out. This time she turns back around, which is something that I reward immediately because she's showing an interest in being in the spot that she's supposed to be in, and she did it all on her own without me asking or being anywhere near the trailer. So her choice to turn back into the trailer and go back inside rather than staying looking out at the end where it's more comfortable for her is something that's huge and needs a big reward. So that's why I immediately reapproached her to give her a reward for doing that, to encourage that behavior and reinforce it so that she more reliably offers it. And then it also helps reduce the anxiety of trailering the traditional way, forward facing, because she made the choice to stay there and she's consistently getting rewarded when she's in that position. And you can actually see her trialing behaviors to try to get the right one. Since she got rewarded for facing forward and putting herself in that position, she does it again. And then what you'll see here is when she turns around, she actually takes a few steps backwards to put her into the backwards facing position too, if she were going to be hauling by herself. And she's still chewing a lot because I've been giving her handfuls of alfalfa pellets and other grains. So she chews a lot in this, but it's because her mouth is almost always full because I have such a frequent reward schedule for her. But I'm really happy to see her offering behaviors that I've been reinforcing without there being any command or cue from me to ask her to do so. So she's had enough reinforcement for those behaviors that she is now more reliably offering them even on her own, which is really great for encouraging calm, quiet behaviors inside the trailer when you obviously cannot be in there with them while they're being driven in it. Working through anxiety with horses is honestly just a lot of repetitive, small, boring steps that require patience on your part, but the payoff is so much bigger than what it is if you try to force something and get the instant gratification of maybe chasing them into the trailer and having it work that one time. But then over time, the anxiety from doing these types of things builds, and you have a horse that's very anxious to trailer, and even if they'll get in, you can have lasting issues like ulcers that are caused from trailering stress, and there's a higher risk of accidents occurring in the trailer if something happens and they panic while in the trailer. And obviously in a situation that they can't free themselves from, panic will continue to grow and they can really hurt themselves. So trying to get their anxiety as low as possible in the trailer is a very important thing for safety, and this is why I so encourage people to take their time with trailer training and work on it in small little steps to encourage horses to be quieter in the trailer. And even if you reduce anxiety and they're loading easily, the trailer still might be an anxiety inducing experience for them because they're flight animals and they're wired to try to protect themselves. And in all honesty, going in a rattling box that always takes them to somewhere new and stressful is probably not something that they're actually going to really enjoy long term. But you want to make it as fun and easy for them as possible with low expectations so as to ensure their success. So now we are nearing the end of our session, so I'm just waiting patiently to see if she will load herself completely on her own, because this is kind of the ultimate test to see if my reinforcement schedule has been strong enough for her to offer these behaviors without any assistance on the part of me or the bucket being in the trailer for her. So there's no bribery in the sense that she knows there's not food in there, the bucket's not in there, she knows what the bucket looks like, so it's ultimately totally her choice to do it, and she can predict the reward from me, but there's not the immediate gratification of having the bucket in there and having that target of the food bucket for her to follow. So she's loaded herself halfway, and you can tell she's definitely less sure without me going in there first or knowing that the bucket is in there waiting for her. And she's investigating, looking out the side window of the trailer right now, which is really good. She's watching the goings on around the farm and she's staying in there. So even though she's not loaded herself all the way, I'm still rewarding her periodically because she's staying in the trailer where she is supposed to be. She's not panicking, and she offered the behavior that I want. So even if it's not the full behavior, it's still shaping towards what I am looking for, which is loading at liberty. So I'm rewarding her periodically for staying in there, because she could ultimately just choose to back out and choose not to go in all of the way after. And this requires patience, and I know some people would want to get behind the horse and try to usher them in, but if you wait, you will get rewarded. So now she's gotten all the way in, she's facing forward in her spot. I'm rewarding her heavily with lots of handfuls of treats and scratching her neck, really praising her and just kind of hanging out in there with her for a bit, because my presence does give her comfort. But then I pull myself out of there so that she has to be in there alone and kind of get used to being in there alone again and not always be reliant on my presence. And then when she turns around calmly and looks, it's really good. So I still reward this because she's not coming flying out, and she used to want to charge out really quickly. So that stopping and looking behavior is something that's really important for a horse like her, because it's really dangerous when they decide to come out too quickly. So now I've put the bucket back in the trailer because I'm working on building duration for her forward facing, and I'm going to do this by having the high reward of the grain food in the trailer where she's supposed to be, right up at the front of her spot. I haven't closed the divider forward facing yet because I don't want to do it until she has built enough duration standing there and choosing to face forward. She's more comfortable facing the back, which is totally fine because we can haul her backwards if need be, but obviously it's better for them to know both ways. So I'm building duration in the forward facing position, and then the next session that I do with her, what we will do is start practicing closing the divider with her facing forward, and then from there we can start to build with having her stand tied in the trailer and so on and so forth. She actually ties quite well, so I'm not really concerned about the tying component, because with some horses who pull back when tied, that's a pretty big factor that you need to work on first outside of the trailer to get them to stop pulling back when tied. But since that's not a problem for her, I'm just kind of waiting, and I'm watching her and making sure she's still forward facing, making sure that she's kind of just staying in her spot and waiting to build duration, because I'm increasing my demands from her behavior wise before the reward. But here I get distracted by a cat, ADHD problems, so maybe don't be like me in that scenario. But with that said, she's been reliably reinforced enough throughout this that it's not a big hit if your timing is not always perfect. Despite the bucket being outside of the trailer now and me holding the food being outside the trailer, she's choosing to stay in there because she knows she gets rewarded for it. So I'm rewarding the calm behavior of staying in there, and then I start to stand back, and I have a cue where I kind of just wave towards her with my hands, like a come here cue to get her to come out, and then call for her, and then she'll start to unload herself. So I go out of frame here for a few minutes, and then I come back and I ask her for the unload cue, and then that's where she unloads and she kind of looks. She doesn't love the step down, but she's really quite good about it now, and she's not coming flying out. Before, she kind of wanted to jump out and turn and come out fast. So the slow part for her is really good. And with that said, if she had a halter on, you could get her to unload a lot quicker if you wanted to. It's not like she's afraid to come out, but since I've reinforced the standing quiet behavior, that's what she's reliably offering me, which is way safer than having them come flying out. So I'm not really concerned about her choice to stay in there, especially since I've been working on teaching her that the trailer is a rest spot where she will be fed. And now we're just having a break. I'm giving her a scratch in her itchy spots, and she quite likes it. This is just a reward near the trailer where I'm just kind of praising her, petting her, and just letting her relax and taking off the pressure of training and continuing to offer the repeated behaviors. And then it just gives her something nice to do and gives her a nice break. And then I'm just waiting here again, and we're gonna go for a bit of a walk. But instead of walking with me, this time she decides to approach the trailer. Really big, huge step here, because this is a very good, reliable behavior to offer when you're trying to teach them to load themselves at liberty. And even though she's not in yet, her interest in the trailer is a big deal, because she chose to come walk away from me and go towards the trailer, even though I'm the reinforcing person, because she knows I have food and I'm kind of her calm person. So this is where I walk in right away to reward her. She turned around a little faster than what I would like, but then she backs up into her spot to load backwards. So still a good thing from her. And then I practice the divider again with her, and this time I actually do close it, and then I reward her. I don't like keeping them closed for too long, because you don't want to push a good thing, especially since this has been such a positive session. It's better to wait and have things be shorter and less perfect than what you might want in the end, but have it go extremely well, than it is to push it a little too long and have something bad happen. So that's kind of why I don't really push things too hard too fast, because if you screw up and you make a mistake and create a flight reaction, then you're essentially starting back from square one again, which is no fun, and it's super frustrating because you're just kicking yourself for being too impatient. So now what I'm doing is taking myself completely out of the arena so that I can stand at the front of the trailer where she can't see me and get ready to feed her through the window of the trailer if she does choose to load herself. She can't see me, so this is ultimately her choice. There's no cues. She's just kind of chilling and finishing her mouthful of food right here and just hanging out, and that's totally fine. I'm waiting patiently just to kind of see what she does. If she doesn't choose to load herself, that's also no big deal, because the important thing about loading at liberty is the choice. So she has a choice. The choice is hers. She knows what choice is most likely to be rewarding. So that's kind of where you're modeling their behavior from the standpoint of making it more likely for them to offer a certain behavior because of the reward. She decided to take herself for a bit of a walk to go look at the other horses at the end of the arena because they were running around. Again, this is okay. I encouraged her to go walk if she wanted to go have a break from the trailer, have a break from training. So she's using a lot of the behaviors that I've been reinforcing, but without me there. And she actually doesn't walk away for very long. She walks to the end of the arena and then stands there looking at the other horses running for a bit. And then as soon as they stop, she starts to turn around and come back. So this is huge because it's not like I had to stand and wait for like 20 minutes for her to do what I wanted her to do. It's really just a few minutes of time. And I know for some people this might be frustrating and not something they want to wait for, but it's totally worth it in the end because she made me really, really proud in this session. So now she's approaching the trailer again. Just reminder that I'm not anywhere near the trailer. I'm standing by the window waiting to feed her. You can see my hand sticking out the window, waving a little bit because because I'm just kind of seeing if she'll go in. And then she goes and she looks and she goes right in with basically no hesitation whatsoever. That's like her best attempt at complete liberty without me being in the immediate vicinity of the trailer to elicit her behavior. And I'm really happy with her. I feed her a bunch of handfuls. I have some carrots as like a jackpot reward, which means they're higher value than the little pieces of grain that I was using before. So it's a bit more of an exciting reward. And then the other thing that I really like that she does is she was gonna turn around but then stops and she takes more treats from me. But then you'll see that when she does turn around, she actually backs her bum all the way right up into the spot. And since I can't feed her from her bum and I'm standing at the window, instead of feeding her, I scratch her on her bum in an itchy spot that she likes. And this is still a reward. It's just less highly reinforcing than food typically. But with that said, she does really like food and she does really like scratches. So it's still enough of a reward. And then she also backs up even more. She gets a big scratch. She likes it. I can see her lips moving, and that shows me that I hit a good spot and that she's happy. And then that means that it's a better reward because she's reacting nicely to the grooming because she genuinely enjoys it. And then this is where I come back over the fence. I figured she might try to leave when I do this because she'd probably see me pop my head up by the window and it could scare her, but she doesn't. So this is where I reward her really heavily because she remains in the trailer completely on her own and stays in the spot she's supposed to be in without me being there to constantly reward her or encourage the behavior to happen. And then her duration on staying in this correct spot where she's supposed to be loaded when she's actually driving, it extends. So I'm really, really pleased to see this because she's showing that she has learned a lot from this session and it's really very positive. So this is right where I end the session, and basically this video is the entire session of me working with her. I just cut out some of the parts where we kind of walked around and took a break because those parts are more boring and I can kind of just explain the importance of that rather than extending the length of the video. But this was basically the whole session. I was super pleased to end on this note and she was just fantastic. And this is honestly the best way to get your horse to reliably load. If you coerce them into the trailer, you might get them in faster for the first few times you do it. But generally speaking, you'll save way more time long term if you just build their confidence and don't make trailering a fear-inducing experience. And then it also makes it safer for both you and the horse for loading and unloading and hauling. And the entire experience is just better because you don't have to dread loading them or worry about them not loading. Because ultimately, if they decide they don't want to go in, you're screwed. They won't. And no matter how much force you use, they can just decide not to do it. And then you are back to square one, and it's a whole lot more frustrating, especially if you've grown used to using excessive force. There's only so much you can increase that force, and if the horse is nervous enough and they've grown used to constantly being forced in, they can hit a point where they just say no, and you can continue escalating and escalating, and it still won't get them in, but you'll create such a high anxiety level that they're at way higher risk of hurting themselves or you. So I highly discourage from doing that, and I recommend using these types of tactics to help build confidence and reduce fear when they're loading.